On first down, they hand off to Marlon Mack. Huge hole, 50-yard line. He's at the 40, still going near sideline. He's at the 10. He's at the 5, and he will score. Touchdown, Marlon Mack. Touchdown, INDY. And again, it's picked off. It's Darius Leonard. Leonard with a second INT, and he's streaking down the near sideline. He's at the 40. He's at the 30. He's at the 20. He's going to go. A pick six for the Maniac. Kenny Moore gets to Deshaun Watson. That's a sack for Kenny Moore. Kenny has a pick and now a sack in the game.
Horseshoe is back, baby. The horseshoe is back.
How's it going, Colts Nation? Welcome back to the Bring the Juice podcast. I'm your co-host, Derek Larger, and joining me as always is Cody Felger. And today we're going to be talking to you guys. Here's another edition of our draft series. We're going to be breaking down the linebacker room and the safety room for you guys. And then this one, it's going to be a little bit shorter, I think, because linebacker room, not a whole lot of different guys that we can mention that we would think we would go for later in the draft. And obviously, because linebacker might be one of the only areas on this team that doesn't need any really big improvements. So very few guys there, and then a couple safeties worth noting. But let's just jump into it here. Cody, we got the first guy here. Why don't you go ahead and start us off with the first guy in our linebacker room?
All righty. First guy on our list here, Jacob Phillips, linebacker, 6'4", 229 pounds. Out of LSU, he has 32.38-inch arms, 10-inch hands, 40 time of 4.66, probably a third to fifth round guy. He was a steady linebacker for LSU in 2019. He had 113 tackles. He had a sack, a forced fumble, one pass defended. That year, 2018, he had 87 tackles with a sack, one interception, and 3 passes defended. And I would say for him, he's better at, stopping the run than as opposed to, defending the pass. And so for me, he's a guy that's more of a run thumper type of player. Could potentially be a late round guy that you just get to continue to shore up that run defense. Derek, what do you think about Jacob Phillips?
Yeah, if there's one thing that these linebackers for LSU outside of chasing, they're all really good at stopping the run, Patrick Queen included. Jacob Phillips puts up numbers that kind of resemble to me what Anthony Walker does for us. The tackle numbers really high, not many sacks or forced fumbles or anything like that, but you just look at the tackle numbers and that's quite impressive when you look at it. So you got a decent sized middle linebacker that just thrives in the run game, which is certainly something we could use. And then the only other linebacker we have here to break down for you guys are more than welcome to tell us if there's any other linebackers you would think that we could go for realistically later in the draft that we missed here. But here we have Logan Wilson from Wyoming. He's 6'2", 250 pounds, same arm length as Jacob Phillips, 32.38 inches, 9.5-inch hands, ran a 4.63 40 time. In 2019, Wilson had 105 tackles with 7 passes defended, a sack, a forced fumble, and 4 interceptions. Team sources from a bunch of players believe Wilson can be a draftable, solid player midway to the end of the draft. In 2018, he is a very steady tackler and consistently productive over all 3 seasons that he's played. As a junior, had 103 tackles with 11 for a loss, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 4 passes broken up. He collected 119 tackles as a sophomore and 94 in 2016. So, this guy definitely is very productive when you look at the numbers in every single way that he's played. Again, it's just not something that he does better over the other. I think that's kind of why, you see his stock drop, because he's not really great at anything. He's just, consistently good at most things that he does. you see the numbers in pass coverage and in stopping the run. Logan Wilson, if he falls that late and, and they're thinking of maybe adding some more depth at linebacker, I mean, Logan Wilson can definitely be a guy you might want to stretch your hand out for, especially at 6'2", 250 pounds. Cody, what do you think of Logan here?
Yeah, he's a solid player overall. I wouldn't say that he's particularly great at anything. I think if I had to choose some of the things that he's really good at, I would probably say he has a decent frame, and he's really good at reading and reacting to the run, especially. He's a super sharp guy. He's a guy that reads what the running back is doing a lot of times, things in the backfield, and is able to make plays. One of the things that I think will be a knock on him, though, is he doesn't have elite physical qualities anywhere. He may never develop into a starting linebacker, but he's a guy that I think has some things that you like, especially because he's a sound tackler. He's a guy that is good to get off blocks, which is big. He's a guy that he's okay at his mobility laterally. He's adequate, I guess, if you'd say. He's a guy that he has decent coverage skills, which I think is good, especially considering we know how bad the Colts have been. It seems like guarding the tight ends for a long time. But overall, he's a solid player for me. I wouldn't say he's spectacular, so I could probably see him, mid to later rounds. But I wouldn't be opposed to drafting him if he's there around 4, 5, 6, something like that. Now we can move on to the safety room. First guy on our list here, he's a guy that I think some people have liked. I like him a lot. That's Antoine Winfield. He's a guy, he played last year, 5'9", 203, arm length 30.13, 9.5-inch hands, 4.45 40 time, probably second to fourth round guy. Last year with the Gophers, he had 7 interceptions, which is significant. It's notable. 85 tackles, 3 sacks, and a pass broken up. He also has some pretty good instincts in terms of making big plays, and we know how much of an emphasis Chris Ballard has made about making big plays. Some of the knocks on him, though, he has some size and length limitations in the NFL. The one thing that he did help with in the combine is running a pretty fast 40 there, 4.45. But overall, I like Winfield as a potential day 2 guy for the Colts there in the safety room, especially considering Chris Ballard has, in his press conference said, we don't know if we're going to pick up Malik Hooker's 5th-year option yet. So potentially could be a guy if you decide not to there in Winfield. Derek, what do you think about Antoine Winfield?
Yeah, Antoine is definitely a guy that, you measure the heart of him rather than the height of him. I mean, obviously intangibles are not amazing when it comes to his height, but again, that 40 time is great. You just look at the numbers. I mean, the numbers don't line up with, what he should be able to do at his size, but it goes to show you he just plays hard and, his limitations just don't bother him. And that's definitely a guy that I think is worth looking at because obviously Colts are all about that locker room, right? And who fits into there. And Antoine Winfield definitely could fit in there for a guy that, even though he's smaller, doesn't seem to let that affect him at all. And now we're going to move on to another one. Kaleke Hudson from Michigan, 5'11", 220 pounds, 30-inch arms, 10-inch hands, ran a 4.56 40 time. Hudson in 2019 totaled 102 tackles, 3 passes defended, and 2 sacks in 2019. Was a very solid run defender who could stand to improve his pass coverage. In 2018, Hudson had 45 tackles with 2 sacks and a pass broken up. He just needs to improve in the passing game, but Hudson definitely is an excellent blitzer with the upside to develop more coverage skills. I mean, it's an interesting prospect. That's why he's a potential 4th, 6th round guy. But again, it's just something where, you see a guy that, is a hard hitting safety. He's good at getting blitzes up the middle and is a good run defender, but, just has to work in coverage. So what do you think, Cody? What you high or no on Hudson here?
Well, he's definitely a big safety. He's a guy that definitely an inbox type of safety. Uh, he's a guy that he actually has played some linebacker, some edge. He kind of fits. Some of the comparisons have been to Derwin James, kind of that kind of mold type of guy. He's a guy that I definitely think, like you said, he's a good run defender. And he's also good at pass rushing, which is interesting. He's a guy that definitely needs to work on his man coverage, but he's very physical in his man coverage, especially guarded up against the tight ends. I think he has some good flexibility in his hips. Definitely when dealing with some releases from the receivers. He's a guy that I think is, like you said, the big knock on him is his man coverage. And I think that is due in part to kind of his aggressive nature. And he's not the most athletic guy in the world, which I think is notable as well. And he also can be kind of grabby at times. But what are you going to expect a little from the guy like that big? Sometimes you can't keep up with some of those small receivers, and so that can get him into some trouble sometimes. But overall, I think adding, especially with losing Clayton Geathers, if you add this guy 5th, 6th round, he's certainly got the physicality to kind of complement Corey Willis at that strong safety position. Guy out of Michigan, he's big. If he can clean up a little bit of his man coverage and some of that stuff, I think it can be a pretty good box safety for you, especially if we like Corey Willis a lot, and just getting him another physical guy in there, kind of taking Clayton Geathers' role there. Maybe play some linebacker for you in situations. I like him, especially like him later on in the draft. I think he could be potentially a guy that we could see the Colts taking there, especially if they don't address and don't sign a guy like Eric Berry to kind of fill that role. Maybe they decide to go younger in the draft. And so, yeah, I like Hudson there, especially as a mid to late round pick for me there. Next guy on our list here, J.R. Reed. He's a safety out of Georgia, 6'1", 202, 32.5-inch arms, 9.88 hands, 4.57 40 time, probably 3rd to 5th round guy. In 2019, for the Bulldogs, he had 54 tackles, an interception, and 7 passes broken up. He was solid and dependable. He's a very smart guy. He's a very reliable defender. I probably would say he would probably honestly be drafted higher if he had a better skill set. He's a guy that in 2019, he's a guy that had 66 tackles, 2 passes broken up, and 2 interceptions in 2018. He's a quality run defender as well from that safety position. But one thing that he could definitely beef up on is his weight and just adding more weight to his frame. But Derek, what do you think overall about J.R. Reed?
Yeah, J.R. Reed's a very dependable guy, like you mentioned. Just a guy that, just seems to be all over the place. Doesn't have very great tackle numbers, but, again, has a few interceptions here and there, a bunch of passes broken up. So, he's reliable in coverage. Being 6'1", 202 pounds, that's decent size. And 32.5-inch arms, not necessarily the greatest, but that's pretty decent nonetheless. So J.R. Reed's definitely an interesting prospect for a 4th or 5th rounder for me. Next guy we're going to get into, Antoine Brooks from Maryland. Antoine, actually, I think I mentioned him. No, Cody mentioned him in his mock draft because he had him getting picked later. Antoine actually started out his career as a linebacker, but eventually moved to safety due to being shorter and, the weight. So Antoine Brooks at 5'10", 213 pounds, 31.75-inch arms, 8.38-inch hands. It's really small, honestly. 4.64 40 time, not too great there. But he had a really productive senior year, and he's a really great run stopper. He made 85 tackles that last year, had 1 interception and 5 passes defended as well. Brooks also contributed in junior year where he had 68 tackles and 77 in his sophomore year. Again, another run stopping safety that we see here. So that could be an interesting one. Cody, what do you think here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, similar to the guy we just looked at before. He is a physical guy. He definitely sets the tone with his presence. But similar there, he also is a guy that struggles in man coverage. Maybe he has a little bit of tight hips at times. He's a guy that, maybe in his zone drops is a little bit erratic as well. He's a guy that definitely can get caught between zones, kind of covering grass sometimes. So he's not particularly great at coverage, but he's more of a physical type of, safety that you kind of see. A good sound tackler, huge hitting power. He's a guy that is, he can play in the box. He can shoot gaps. He's had a lot of success with that at the college level. He's a guy that you can send on blitz. He has really good motor as well. He's probably going to be, for me, probably more of a special teamer type of guy. He's very, very good at special teams. He was really good last year. He's just one of those guys, I would say overall he's probably just more of a physical special teams guy for me. Derek, what do you think about him?
Yeah, like I said, I'm totally down for Antoine Brooks. I mean, if that's indeed the route that they want to go as a run guy. But let's move on here to one of my other guys. And this is a guy that I know very well because he played for my favorite team, Ohio State, and that's Jordan Fuller. Jordan Fuller, 6'2", 203 pounds, 31-inch arms, 9-inch hands, 40 time of around a 4.6.5. So he's projected to be a 4 to 6 round guy. In 2019, Fuller recorded 62 tackles with 2 interceptions and 4 passes broken up. He's a very solid defender for Ohio State. Fuller obviously has some limitations when you look at, that height. I mean, not even the height. It's the 200 pounds, only 31-inch arms and 9-inch hands. Really small for somebody that's 6'2". I think he's actually the tallest guy that we've talked about when it comes to safety so far. But again, you look at the numbers and everything else. One thing I really like about this guy is his character. Ohio State did a whole series on this guy and around his life. I mean, he was a captain at Ohio State, and in order to be a captain at Ohio State, you really have to be the highest of the highs in order to be considered for something like that. His character just speaks volume. Is kind of the same way that the Colts viewed Paris Campbell when they were talking about how the position coach told them that when his kid grows up, he wants him to be exactly like Paris. Well, a lot of people say that same thing about Jordan Fuller. So Fuller's character and personality mixed with his game, I think could be a legit option later in the draft if that's something that has to be addressed because of the Malik Hooker issue. Be kind of funny to replace one former Buckeye safety with another Buckeye safety. But anyway, Cody, what do you think about Jordan Fuller here?
I like his physical nature. I like how aggressive he is. I like his toughness. I like his character. I like his coverage skills, especially facing against the tight ends. I like him a lot, especially later on. I think he has a lot of good things that you like in safeties. I don't know, Derek, but I felt like last year he had maybe not the best idea of how to have good angles when tackling, and that's probably one of the bigger knocks on him. He's kind of hit or miss with that. He has some physical limitations, like you mentioned, which will definitely kind of bring down his stock a little bit. I feel like he's a guy that could definitely, especially from a character standpoint, he's definitely a guy that I think overall I would not mind. I think he's not actually very bad at really anything. I mean, he's good at a lot of things. I just think some of the physical limitations, not being an elite type of athlete, could kind of limit his projection and kind of take his draft stock down a little bit. But overall, I like him. Especially if you get him in the mid to later rounds, can contribute on special teams right away, and is just a guy that definitely kind of transition well into this Colts defense. Moving on now to the next guy that we have here, Reggie Floyd. He's a guy. He's 6 foot, 222, 4.61 40 time, probably 4th to 6th round guy. 2019, he had 69 tackles, 8 passes defended. He's probably projected to play more strong safety here. He's tough. He's a guy for Virginia Tech that he had 88 tackles, 9.5 for a loss, 2 interceptions, and a pass broken up. So, like, he's a guy in 2018 that was. He's a guy that overall I think he projects well as a strong safety, especially going back to he has the right size. He's the type of guy that he can kind of also maybe play some dime linebacker for you if needed. He's a guy that can project well, especially 4th to 6th round. Get Clayton Geathers replacement guy to back up Corey Willis for the near future. What do you think about Floyd, Derek?
Yeah, again, the size is really nice. 6 foot, 222 pounds, running a 4.6. I mean, that's pretty good there. You saw it. It's a really strong safety here. Really tough defender. I mean, his numbers speak for itself. That you're definitely right. That could be interesting to see Reggie Floyd kind of come down in the defense on a lower level and see what he can do with that size. That's certainly an interesting option, especially with Eberflus trying to mix things up with the zone. That certainly does sound interesting. All right, so last safety that we have here and for this safety room, and that is Jalen Hawkins, coming in at 6'1", 208 pounds, 31 3/4 inch arms, 9.5 inch hands, ran a 4.6. In 2019, Hawkins totaled 53 tackles with 2 passes defended, 2 interceptions, and 2 sacks. In 2018, Hawkins was one of the most dangerous ball hawks in college football when he actually snatched 6 interceptions. Also had 9 passes defended that year too. So they definitely put him on notice with how great he was in coverage. So certainly looks like a guy that, is definitely more of a ball hawk type of safety. What do you think here, Cody?
I'm all for getting as many ball hawks as you can get, especially with the uncertainty around Malik Hooker. Yeah, I like his range a lot. I think he's a guy that shows great instincts in terms of when the ball's in the air. He's a guy that knows where the quarterback wants to go with it, and he can get there. He's a guy that, he's a guy that I think similar kind of to Hooker is not the greatest at tackling, but he's a guy that has great ball skills, like you mentioned. And he's physical, which is big. He's a physical guy, and he's not afraid to go up and tackle, even though he's not the greatest at it. I mean, I like him a lot. It's kind of crazy to think he had that many interceptions in 2018, and now he's projected to be potentially a back half type player, 4th to 6th round. But no, I like him a lot, especially looking at him in the mid to late rounds. I think he could find some success there, especially early in a depth role. Overall, man, I like him, especially like him, considering he has had some good production as a ball hawk in the past. And if you can get him late and see what you got with him, I'm totally for it. But thank you, guys. I think that'll do it now. I think that's everybody on our list. Like Derek said in our last podcast, you'll have to forgive us. It's been a long day. We're trying to knock out a couple of these podcasts in one evening. And so we're both pretty tired, but, we wanted to crank this content out to you guys because we want you guys to know that, we want to provide this coverage for you and we want to be able to give you our take on this. So despite the fact that we're tired, we're doing our best, and we want to give you guys quality coverage and looking at this NFL draft because it's coming very quickly. It's going to be a very exciting couple of days, and we're certainly excited. We want to give you guys a little bit of our thoughts and a little bit of our insight into some of these draft picks and how they fit with the Colts. But, yep, that'll do it for this podcast, guys. Thank you as always. And as always, go Colts.